Good afternoon. How's everybody doing? Great to be learning with you on a Friday. Yom Shishi, Erev Shabbos. Let's light up the darkness. Who's in the house? Yehud in South Carolina, Karen in Northern California, Gordo in Scotland, Melissa in Great Neck, Lucy in Minnesota, Renee in Indiana, Bella in Florida, Lorraine in Texas, Belle in Texas. Hi, I'm in Florida, Mickey. I'm going to start cooking the Shabbos meal now. Everyone, peace. Aoife in Florida. Welcome, everybody. First of all, I apologize. I was a couple of minutes late starting the class. I'm going to give you more information than you needed to know, but I'm going to mention it because this too is Torah, and we must learn it. So I was sitting here and I had a choice to make. Start the class on time or go to the bathroom. I really had to go to the bathroom. I suppose I could just, hold on and make it work. It's not a particularly long daf today. But we learn in the Gemara. You guys remember? We learn in the Gemara. Like, it's actually considered by our sages something that's very bad for your health to hold it in when you got to go. So if it's at all possible when you got to go, you got to go. So I said, well, it's a Talmud class, and as much as I really try to be on time whenever possible, I got to go. So I went. But I'm mentioning it, embarrassing myself, but I'm mentioning it because that is halacha. If you gotta go, you gotta go. Tonight we begin Av, the Hebrew month of Av, also known as Menachem Av, and that's at a month that when it comes in, we lower our simcha just as we increase our joy. When we enter Adar, the month that includes Purim, when we enter Av, the month that includes Tisha B'Av, the 9th of Av, which is the lowest point in the Hebrew calendar, that date in history, which is a week from Sunday, when so many calamities happen, when the people freaked out in the desert upon hearing the report of the scouts, the spies who were sent into the land to check it out, who said the land is incredibly beautiful, this promised land that God is going to give us, but it's occupied by giants who devour, people who are not as powerful as them, and, we're going to try to enter the land, and they're going to kill us. And the people cried and wailed and panicked. This is the people who are now drinking the water every day that God gave them and eating the manna every day that God gave them and not in this blazing sun in the desert because of the clouds of glory that God gave them, who had watched Pharaoh's army, the most powerful army in the world, be destroyed rather than kill them by God. And so God did not appreciate their panic, and that's why that generation spent 40 years in the desert, and they died out in the desert, and it was their children who would enter the land. But that happened, that event, on the 9th of Av. The first temple was destroyed on the 9th of Av. The second temple was destroyed on the 9th of Av. The expulsion from Spain and the Inquisition happened on the 9th of Av. World War I began on the 9th of Av. I'm not even thinking of a bunch of other calamities in Jewish history. So when we enter the month of Av, we have to diminish our joy. However, Rosh Chodesh has its own rules, and especially when Rosh Chodesh falls on Shabbos, we don't diminish our joy. Shabbos is always Shabbos. And so, we'll enter Shabbos tonight. And then we have this period we don't eat meat during the 9 days. We, really try to diminish all our activity, and we try to, cultivate a feeling of mourning that we don't have the temple in our midst anymore. We don't have that revealed presence of God in our midst as it was the ongoing miracles that were present when the Holy Temple stood in Jerusalem. And we were able to fulfill all our obligations in the Torah, bringing the various offerings that could only be brought when the temple is standing, and now it's not. So for many reasons, we mourn during these 9 days. But interesting, I heard something today from my friend Eli Sharf, that the way this is expressed in Hebrew, right, is that we lessen being with joy, right? Besimcha, simcha is joy. Besimcha is with joy, right? And so we lessen that sense of being with joy. That's the way we normally understand it. We lower our joy as we enter Av. We'll make it to the 9th of Av, and then after that, we zoom up as we get into Elul and prepare for Rosh Hashanah. We come before our Maker to be judged, and we certainly have to make an accounting of our deeds, but we're coming before our Father in heaven, and so there's a great joy in that. We really start to escalate in so many ways when we come out of the 9th of Av. But even in these 9 days that we're entering, you could read it a little different. We have to lessen what we do. We don't eat meat during this time. We don't listen to music during this time. There's a lot of things that we don't do because we're adopting the practices of mourning. And so because we're doing those things, normally our joy would be diminished. But what Eli says is, no, we lessen these things because that's the law, and we follow the law that our sages gave us, and this is the way we express our love and longing for God. But we do it besimcha. Right? It's so interesting, right? Because we know that we're following God's will. Anytime we're doing a mitzvah, anytime we're following the tradition and doing what we're obligated to do as Jews, we should be besimcha. So if we're taking on practices that are the practices of mourning, well, we embrace those practices. We actually don't necessarily lower our actual feeling of joy. Rather, we feel joy in doing a different set of mitzvahs than we normally do. We're still doing God's will in this period. It's a very different way of looking at the period, and one that I was really struck by, and I wanted to share that with you guys. Okay. So it's always, it really is special, right? It really is special if you trust, if we trust God, if we trust our dear beloved parent who created us and cares for us so much, then, we obviously can thank God in the highs and all the blessings that we're enjoying, and we have to be able to thank God for the challenges too. Lately our lives had a lot of roller coaster. Shared with you about the movie. There's a very big announcement coming soon. We're just, finalizing it now. It really came out of nowhere. It's incredible. But good things are happening on the heels of really tough stuff. This is not the venue for that right now, but I can say that even when it was really tough, I was like, okay, God, it wasn't my plan. It's your plan. I don't see it yet, but I trust you. And I just really encourage all of us when we're in tough times. It's hard to remember, and you can't, when somebody else is going through tough times, you can't make them adopt this philosophy. You just sit with them and hold them, right? Just be with people who are going through tough times. But for ourselves, I just have found this to be very important in my life. And, I just want to share with you. Okay. We are continuing our discussion of Mishna number 5 here in chapter 2 of Tractate Avoda Zara, the 27th volume of the Talmud, where our daf today is page 39. We got a good start on 39a yesterday, about halfway down. And with God's help, we're going to complete Mishna number 5 today and open Mishna 6. We've been discussing that the sages said you can't eat food cooked by Gentiles. A Jew cannot eat food cooked by Gentiles. A Gentile can participate in the cooking, but it has to be supervised by a Jew, essentially, to make sure that we're going to be eating kosher food. And then there were all the other concerns that we talked about yesterday, especially in this period. The non-Jews were all idolaters, practicing idolatry, a very, very terrible sin. Also engaged in all kinds of forbidden sexual practices and violence, not to mention eating all kinds of non-kosher food that was prohibited for Jews. So for all these reasons, the sages were passing decrees that would keep us at a distance from other people. Once we were talking about foods that are permitted and prohibited, we got into some specific foods that we're not sure. A person might not be sure, is that kosher or is it not? And we've been talking about some of these foods. We continue that. The Mishnah teaches that a sliver of hiltit, may not be consumed, although one may derive benefit from it, right? So there were different kinds of prohibitions. Some foods, a Jew is prohibited from consuming it, but he could buy and sell it. He could benefit from it. But for example, the wine of idolaters, you can't drink it, and you can't even buy and sell it because it was probably used for idolatry. The lesser prohibition is you can't consume it, but you can benefit from it, meaning, for example, you could buy or sell it. So this sliver of hiltit may not be consumed, but you may derive benefit from it. So the Gemara asks, what is the reason that it is prohibited at all, even for consumption? It is because they slice it, meaning the non-Jews, right? The Gentiles slice it with a knife on which there is presumably non-kosher residue. And even though the master said that a prohibited substance that imparts flavor to the detriment of the mixture is permitted, it's just a very tiny amount of residue. If it improved the flavor of what would otherwise be a kosher food, we would make it prohibited. But if it only adds a detrimental flavor, so you would never, get used to eating that non-kosher food, it actually lessens the taste, to the detriment of the flavor. It would not become a habit to make things taste worse. So then we're not going to pass a decree on it. That's why it would be permitted. So again, and even though the master said that a prohibited substance that imparts flavor to the detriment of the mixture would be permitted, that principle does not apply in this case because as a result of the sharpness of the hiltit, the act of slicing it with a knife sweetens, i.e. enhances the taste of the non-kosher residue. And therefore, it is like a prohibited substance that imparts flavor to the enhancement of the mixture, and it is prohibited. Very interesting. I guess just maybe it's like a sharp pepper, and by making less of it, gets it into the realm where you could eat it. Now, the Gemara relates that the slave of Rabbi Levi, so this would be a Gentile slave, would sell hiltit, and it was permitted to purchase it from him as he was the slave of a sage, right? So normally you can't purchase this substance from a Gentile, but in this case you had a Canaanite slave of one of the sages, and this gives you a little bit of an insight into, slavery, never a good thing, ever, never in history, but it was very much a common feature of all the ancient world. But how was slavery practiced by the Jews? Well, this slave of Rabbi Levi was very much a member of the household. So much so that he, you could trust his fulfillment of the mitzvahs, that you could purchase this from him. When Rabbi Levi passed away, they came before Rabbi Yochanan and said to him, now that Rabbi Levi has passed, what is the law with regard to whether or not it is permitted to purchase hiltit from his Canaanite slave? And Rabbi Yochanan said to them, the slave of a chaver, one devoted to the meticulous observance of mitzvahs, especially the laws of ritual purity and teruma and tithes, is a chaver himself. And therefore it is permitted to buy hiltit from him. Right? A chaver, the word means friend, but as we've seen when we're talking about the chaverim, a chaver in a Talmudic context, we're talking basically about the sort of social community of the sages who were very stringent upon themselves, and particularly that they would only eat food in a state of tahara, right? Not tameh food, always had to be tahor. So even though a Jew who's not a Kohen, who's not a priest, may eat food that is tameh at any time, food does not have to be ritually pure. These sages took it upon themselves to act like Kohanim with respect to teruma, and they would only eat food that was in a state of ritual purity. And this slave of Rabbi Levi, even after Rabbi Levi passed away, was treated like a chaver, right? So in other words, to be a chaver, meaning you have to know all the ins and outs of the laws of Tumah and Tahara, so that you could be sure to be eating food and serving food and selling food in that state. So it wasn't just that he had the knowledge to do this, it's that he had the commitment to do this even when his master had died. The Gemara relates another incident that involves the status of a chaver and his household. Rav Huna bar Minyumi purchased techeilis, right, the sky blue dye, So that's the sky blue dye that is used in tzitzis, right? So a Jewish man obligated to wear tzitzis at all times during the day. You don't sleep in it. It's also the fringe or the tzitzis that's on our prayer shawl on the corners. And it used to be that it was just part of the clothing, because clothing in the ancient world was somewhat like a poncho, right? It had a hole in the middle and, went over you, and then you tied it with a belt. And so every garment that was the outer garment had four corners, and a garment with four corners needs to have the tzitzis on it. So the fringes on each of the corner. And within the fringes, there's this one sky blue thread. And this is part of the Shema prayer that, the third paragraph, and God said to Moses, speak to the children of Israel and command them that you shall place the tzitzis on the corner of all your garments throughout your generation. And in the tzitzis on the corner, you will place this blue thread, so that whenever you look at the tzitzis, you will be reminded of all my commandments and to do them, right? So this is the techeilis we're talking about, the blue thread in the tzitzis. You notice that most prayer shawls in the modern world and people wearing tzitzis, like I'm wearing right now under my shirt, it's white. It's all white. There's no blue thread in them. Why is that? Because at a certain point, we lost the process for making the blue thread. Now, there very much is a return of the blue thread. So actually on my talis, on my prayer shawl, I do have tzitzis with the blue thread. Why? Because, it became, what happened was it was very expensive. Where did the blue come from? It was a blue dye, which was it was a blue enzyme, some kind of blue liquid extracted from a particular snail. A snail that could be found, I guess, in the Mediterranean on the coast of the Holy Land. And there were people who knew exactly which snail it was, and how to break that snail, extract this blue liquid, mix it with certain herbs, and turn it into a dye. But it became rarer and rarer, especially in times of persecution, to where people couldn't afford it. They were just having white tzitzis. And then the exact nature of the snail in the recipe was lost. And so for centuries, nobody had techeilis. Nobody had blue thread in their tzitzis. Many centuries. And then in modern times, there are enough rabbis with sufficient prominence making a sufficiently good argument that we have found the snail. It's known as the murex turculus. Trunculus. The murex trunculus snail. They think that's the correct snail. They certainly know how to make a blue dye out of it. It was always problematic, by the way, because you could fake it. You could make a similar blue color with other materials, but the Torah talks about the chilazon, right, which is the snail as it's called in Hebrew in the Torah. And so that's supposed to be the one that we get it from. Like I said, it was lost for many centuries. Now there's enough rabbis with sufficient prominence that there is a movement in the modern world to, fulfill the commandment of having techeilis, which we say every day, twice a day when we say the Shema. It includes a commandment that will have the sky blue thread in our tzitzis. So a lot of people would like to fulfill that commandment, and others say, like Chabad doesn't. They say, we lost it. We never regained it. It was not, a court of sufficient seniority, right, number and wisdom, to say that we have found it again. So this is actually a subject of some debate in modern Judaism. So some do the blue thread and some don't, okay? But at any rate, even back when they had it, there was the fear that it could be forged, right? That somebody might forge it in order to make money because it was so rare and expensive. Therefore, if you were going to purchase this blue dye that came from this particular snail in the ancient world when they did have it, or let's say in the later part of that period when it was coming to become rarer and rarer, you had to know that you were purchasing it from a pious person, a God-fearing person, who would never profit by tricking you into having false blue dye, or the threads in your tzitzis dyed with a false blue dye. That's the underlying issue here. So the Gemara relates another incident that involves the status of a chaver in his household. Rav Huna bar Minyumi purchased techeilis from the people of the household, meaning the wife of Rav Amram the pious. One may purchase these techeilis for his tzitzis only from a reliable individual, as it is easy to counterfeit it. Rav Huna then came before Rav Yosef to ask if he could rely, right? If he could have bought it from Rav Amram, but Rav Amram, let's say, had passed away or was out of town. The question is, can he buy it from the wife of Rav Amram? Right? Rav Amram is an expert rabbi, known to be incredibly pious, certainly a chaver, entirely trustworthy to buy techeilis from him. The woman who's his wife, that she's just his wife, right? She's not a sage. She doesn't have any kind of independent reputation as somebody that you could purchase from, but she's the wife of Rav Amram. So the question is it enough that she's the wife of Rav Amram? The previous paragraph, we learned that you could purchase from the slave of Rabbi Levi. So now the question is, can you purchase from the wife of Rav Amram? And the question came before Rav Yosef to ask if he could rely on her assurance that it was usable for the mitzvah of techeilis. And the answer was not available to Rav Yosef. It's an interesting way of putting it, right? Meaning he's not sure. The answer is not available. I love that. Like the next time I'm not sure about something, the answer is not available to me. I like it. Later, Hanan the tailor happened to meet Rav Huna, and he said to him, from where could poor Rav Yosef have known the answer to this question? And Hanan explained, there was an incident in which I was involved, as I purchased techeilis from the people of the household, meaning the wife, of Rabbenah, the brother of Rabbi Chia bar Abba. And I came before Rab Matana to ask him the same question. Can I purchase from the wife of this sage? And the answer was not available to him either. So I then came before Rav Yehuda of Hagronia, who said to me, you have fallen into my hand, meaning I am the only one who can answer your question. This is what Shmuel said, the wife of a chaver is herself considered like a chaver, and you may therefore rely on her statement. She says the techeilis is good, you can buy the techeilis from her and put it on your tzitzis. The Gemara comments, we learn here that which the sages taught explicitly in a baraisa. The wife of a chaver is like a chaver. The slave of a chaver is like a chaver. I'm a little bit moved by that, right? Because what they're saying is the people who are in this community of the chaverim, right? The pious people, really among the sages, they part of being a sage is that you're going to model the values that you learn and teach. So much so that it's going to touch the people around you, and they're going to elevate their behavior. They might not be sages themselves, but they're going to seek to live at your level of piety, so much so that we can rely on it. Right? Very beautiful. Furthermore, with regard to a chaver that died, his wife and children and members of his household retain their presumptive status, being like a chaver, until they are suspected of engaging in inappropriate deeds. And similarly, with regard to a courtyard in which they sell techeilis, it remains in its presumptive status as a place in which kosher techeilis is sold until it is disqualified due to unscrupulous behavior. We can assume that it is real techeilis, that no one there is trying to rip off the public to make money on this very expensive product, unless we have reason to believe otherwise. And the sages taught the wife of one who is not careful to keep the particulars of certain laws, so this would be an am haaretz, an ignorant person, and who later marries a chaver, and likewise the daughter of an am haaretz who marries a chaver, and likewise the slave of an am haaretz who is sold to a chaver, must all accept upon themselves the commitment to observe the matters associated with chaver status. Right? So if you marry in, or you get purchased into, or you somehow join the household of a chaver, it is expected that you will elevate your behavior and become a more pious, scrupulous person in observance of the mitzvahs because you are now living in the home of a chaver. But the wife of a chaver, who later marries an am haaretz, and likewise the daughter of a chaver who marries an am haaretz, and likewise the slave of a chaver who was sold to an am haaretz, these people need not accept upon themselves the commitment to observe the matters associated with chaver status ab initio. This is the statement of Rabbi Meir. In other words, the company you keep is so dispositive in the way that you behave. That's what they're saying. If you join the household of a chaver, it's going to be expected of you that you're going to comport yourself like a chaver. And if you leave such a household, now you're surrounded by ignorant people, people whose behavior is at a much lower level, ethically, morally, religiously, spiritually. Then the natural thing is that your level is going to drop to be like the people around you. It's almost impossible to maintain an elevated spiritual status when your immediate surroundings of people you live with is much lower. Rabbi Yehuda says they too must accept upon themselves the commitment to observe the matters associated with chaver status ab initio. And similarly, Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar would illustrate this point and say there was an incident involving a certain woman who married a chaver and would tie for him tefillin on his hand. Maybe his one arm was lame and maybe he only had one arm. So he lost his right arm. He can't put on his tefillin. She does it for him. So she's helping him fulfill the mitzvah of tefillin. And she later married a tax collector. Right? Presumably her husband died or she was divorced. And then she married a second husband who was a tax collector. Now, a tax collector sounds like a hateful profession. Who likes a tax collector? But there was a reason for that. The tax collectors were generally unscrupulous people. Obviously, there were exceptions. It would be wonderful to have a very pious and scrupulous person in the job of tax collector. Sadly, because they were so hated, few people wanted to do it, and the ones that did want to do it just were in it for the money. And once you're in tax collecting for the money, so it's not like the IRS, right? It's not like a proper bureaucracy with all kinds of safeguards. Basically, there's a regional tax collector. He pays a fixed fee to the king in order to have that region, and then people come to work for him. They pay him a fixed fee in order to have the tax collection rights in a particular town. And then since they've paid the fixed fee, then they need to collect as much taxes as the fee, and then everything on top of that is their profit. So if they're unscrupulous, they're going to really push the public to get as much possible taxes as they can out of them. It's basically a shakedown and a mob type of arrangement where they're just shaking down the public as much as they can, because the more taxes they collect, the more money they make. Right? It's a private industry, so to speak, and these often attracted very unscrupulous, unholy, unethical people. So what is being said here is that she was, the wife of a certain of a chaver, right? And she would tie his tefillin on for him. Later, she married a tax collector, and she would tie for him the tax seals on his hand, which shows that her new husband had great influence on her level of piety, right? Who is she around? That's her level of piety. When she was married to a chaver, very high level. When she's married to a tax collector. Rav says the substances represented by the acronym Ches Beis Yud Tav, right? These are letters of the alphabet, are prohibited if they were deposited with a gentile while they were sealed with only one seal. That's not enough. Those represented by the acronym Ches Beis Pe Gimel are permitted if they were deposited with a gentile while they were sealed with one seal. So the Gemara elaborates: milk, meat, wine, and techeilis are all prohibited when they are found with only one seal, whereas hiltit, fish stew, bread, and cheese are all permitted when they are found with one seal. You don't need the extra precautions if you're storing something right with the Gentiles. One seal is enough that you can be confident they didn't tamper with it, and then you stored it with them, you got it back, and now you can go on using it as before. But with certain items, the making sure that they have not been tampered with in any way by non-Jews requires a double seal, otherwise you can't be sure. Now the Gemara explains why. The Gemara explains why only one seal is necessary for bread. With regard to what need we be concerned in the case of bread, that one might have thought it requires two seals, if it is due to the concern for the Gentile exchanging the fresh bread of the Jew with his own bread that is less fresh. Well, the difference between cold bread and warm bread is known, and the Jew will realize that there has been an exchange. And likewise, if there's a concern that the Gentile might exchange the more valuable wheat bread of the Jew with his own less valuable barley bread, the Jew will also know about it in this case. And if it is due to the concern that the Gentile might exchange similar kinds of bread with one another, well, it can be assumed that since there is one seal, the Gentile will not trouble himself to go and forge another seal just so that he can exchange bread of equal value. Why would he bother? We are on page 39b, by the way. So the Gemara asks, and according to the opinion of Rav, what is different about cheese that it requires only one seal, whereas milk requires two? If the reason is that the Gentile will not trouble himself and forge a different seal, as cheese is generally inexpensive, and the small profit he might make is not worth the effort to forge the seal, well, then this reasoning should apply to milk also, as he will also not trouble himself and forge a new seal in this case either. And Rav Kahana said, remove the term milk from Rav's statement and enter instead a piece of fish that has no sign of kashrus, that it's kosher. And so the Gemara raised an objection. Rav could not have been teaching that a piece of fish with no signs of kashrus requires two seals, because fish is the same as meat, which is already included in the list of items that require two seals. So the Gemara explains that there are two categories of meat: animal meat and fish meat. Since one might have thought that they're subject to two different laws, Rav therefore teaches that both require two seals if you're going to store it with the Gentile and then get it back and then eat it. Now, the Gemara cites a different set of lists that presented, the Gemara cites a different set of lists than those that were just presented by Rav. And Shmuel says the substances represented by the acronym Beis Yod Tav are prohibited when sealed with one seal, and those represented by the acronym Mem Ches Gimel are permitted when sealed with one seal. So the Gemara explains meat, which is basar, wine, which is yayin, and the techeilis, right? So that's the first group, Beis Yod Tav. They are prohibited when sealed with a single seal, right? These matters are so important and so likely to be, corrupted or used for idolatry by the idolater that you have to have two seals in order to store it with the Gentile and then get it back and use it. Whereas fish stew, marries, and hiltit, and cheese, which is gavina, they are permitted when sealed with a single seal because there's no reason to think that the Gentile will, exchange and forge a seal. They wouldn't have any motivation to do that. The Gemara comments, according to Shmuel, a piece of fish that has no sign of kashrus is the same as meat, and we do not say that there is a difference between two categories of meat. Consequently, he does not include in his list a piece of fish that has no sign of kashrus. The sages taught one may not purchase foods represented by the acronym Yud Mem Ches Gimel in Syria, not even from Jews. And the Gemara explains, one may not purchase wine, nor fish stew, nor milk, nor salkonderit salt, nor hiltit, nor cheese, except when purchased from an expert with a reputation for knowing and upholding the laws of kashrus. Kashrus is the laws of kosher food. And with regard to all of them, if one is a guest in the home of his host, they are permitted, as a Jew is assumed to keep the laws of kashrus in his own home. And the Gemara adds, this supports the statement of Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi. As Yehoshua ben Levi says, if a homeowner sent someone a package of food to his house, the food is permitted. What is the reason? It is because a homeowner does not leave aside permitted foods and eat prohibited foods. And when he sends food to another, he sends from that which he eats himself, even though one may not be allowed to purchase food from that individual. The Mishna teaches that salkonderit salt is prohibited. So the Gemara asks, what is salkonderit salt? Rav Yehuda says that Shmuel says it is salt that all Roman bakers, salkondarai, eat. So the sages taught with regard to salkonderit salt, black salt is prohibited, whereas white salt is permitted. This is the statement of Rabbi Meir. And Rabbi Yehuda says white salt is prohibited and black salt is permitted. So the Gemara cites a third opinion. Rabbi Yehuda ben Gamliel says, in the name of Rabbi Chanina ben Gamliel, this and that, both white and black, salkonderit salt are prohibited. If it's salkonderit, sounds like be safe, don't eat it. The Gemara cites an explanation of this dispute. Rabbi Bar Chana says that Rabbi Yochanan says, according to the statement of the one who says that white salkonderit salt is prohibited, why? It is suspected that the intestines of white non-kosher fish are mixed in it, and this is the reason for the prohibition. According to the statement of the one who says that black salt is prohibited, it is suspected that the intestines of black non-kosher fish are mixed in it. According to the statement of the one who said that this and that are prohibited, he is concerned that this and that, the intestines of both white and black fish, are mixed in with the white and black salt respectively. And the Gemara mentions an additional problem with salkondarit salt. Rabbi Bahu says, in the name of Rabbi Chanina ben Gamliel, there was a certain elder in our neighborhood who would smooth its surface with pig fat. Good reason not to use salkondarit salt. And the Mishnah further teaches that the list of items it mentions are all prohibited. And the Gemara asks, well, since the Mishnah began by stating that the items that it lists are prohibited for consumption but not for benefit, what does this apparently redundant conclusion serve to exclude? And the Gemara answers, according to the opinion of Hilskiah, cited on page 38b, it serves to exclude cases where it is known that the wine of Gentiles was added to the foods, as one may not even derive benefit from such foods. So according to the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan, it serves to exclude fish stew and cheese of beis unyaki, as it is prohibited to derive benefit from these, and accordingly, the unattributed statement of this Mishnah is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Meir, which was cited in the previous Mishnah on page 29b. And that concludes our discussion of Mishnah number 5 here in chapter 2. Moving on, Mishnah 6. And these are permitted for consumption, period. Milk that was milked by a Gentile and a Jew watched him doing it. And honey. And grape clusters, which, despite the fact that they are dripping juice, are not subject to the laws of susceptibility to tuma caused by contact with that liquid. And pickled vegetables, whose usual manner of preparation does not involve adding wine and vinegar to them, and tarit fish that is not minced, and brine that has fish in it, and the leaf of a hiltit plant, and rolled olive cakes. Right? These are foods that are not cooked, and that we have no reason to believe were used for idolatry or got non-kosher food mixed in with them. So you're permitted to eat them. Rabbi Yosei says overripe olives are prohibited. Locusts that came from a salesman's basket are prohibited, whereas those that come from the storeroom are permitted. And likewise, with regard to the portion of the produce designated for the priest, teruma, as will be explained in the Gemara. That was Mishnah number 6. Now the Gemara. We learn from the Mishnah that which the sages taught explicitly in a Baraisa. A Jew may sit beside a Gentile's flock and wait while the Gentile milks his animals and brings the milk to the Jew, and he need not be concerned, even if he cannot see the milking process from his seated position. And the Gemara asks, well, what are the circumstances of this case? If it is known that there is no non-kosher animal in the Gentile's flock, isn't it obvious that the milk is permitted? Where could the milk have come from except from the kosher animal, like a sheep or a goat or a cow? So why would the Baraisa teach an obvious law? And if there is a non-kosher animal in his flock, then why would the milk be permitted, considering the fact that the Jew could not see the Gentile from where he sat, and it might be that the Gentile is bringing him milk from a donkey, which would not be permitted. So the Gemara explains, actually, this is referring to a case where there is a non-kosher animal in the flock, and when the Jew is standing, he can see the Gentile, but when he is sitting, he cannot see the Gentile. So lest you say, since when the Jew is sitting, he cannot see the Gentile, we should be concerned that perhaps the Gentile will bring him non-kosher milk and mix it with the kosher milk. The Baraisa therefore teaches us that since when the Jew is standing, he can see him, the Gentile is aware and fearful of being caught, mixing in the non-kosher milk, and so he wouldn't do it. I'm almost done. Questions or comments, please get them in now. And the Mishnah taught, and the honey of Gentiles is permitted. And the Gemara explains, for what would we need to be concerned with regard to honey? If it is due to the concern that the Gentile might mix wine with it, well, honey spoils when it is mixed with wine, and therefore a Gentile would not do so. And if it is due to the cooking of the Gentiles, this too does not apply, because honey is eaten as it is, raw. If it is due to the concern that the honey might have absorbed prohibited taste from a vessel of the Gentiles that requires purging, like it had some non-kosher food in it, this does not apply either, as it is prohibited, as it is a prohibited substance that imparts flavor to the detriment of the mixture. And such a case is permitted. And since none of these concerns are relevant, honey is permitted. And the Mishnah further teaches grape clusters, which, despite the fact that they are dripping juice. Now, what are we talking about here? We said that when it comes to, let's say, a pile of grain, right, grain can become tameh. So, if haaretz, a dead creeping thing, fell into it, a man who had a, seminal discharge, came into contact with the grain, he could render it impure. And then we would not be able to take teruma from that grain and give it to a priest for the priest to eat, because both the priest and the teruma need to be tahor, ritually pure, when he's going to go and eat it. However, if the grain has never come into contact with any liquid whatsoever, it's dry grain that has never become moistened by any liquid, that grain cannot become tameh. It is not susceptible to tuma until it has first come into contact with some liquid. It doesn't mean it has to be, soaked and become porridge, but there has to be some degree of moistening of that pile of grain with one of the 7 liquids, right? Water, blood, milk, I think oil, and there's 3 others that dew, I think, is a separate category than water. So there's a few, okay? So what about this juice on the outside of the grapes? I mean, what is it? Is that dew that collects outside the grapes, or is it a little bit of seepage, grape juice seeping outside the grapes? I think wine is actually one of the 7 liquids. So are we going to say that this bit of grape juice that seeps outside the grape skins, is it like wine, which could render grain susceptible to tuma, or is it not? Sounds like it's not. Let's keep reading. Where is that? And grape clusters, which, despite the fact that they are dripping juice, are not subject to the laws of susceptibility to tuma caused by contact with that liquid. It sounds like maybe the liquid could render grain tameh, but they don't render the grapes themselves tameh. And the Gemara raises a contradiction from the following baraisa. With regard to one who harvests grapes in order to take them to the press and crush them to make wine, there is a dispute as to whether or not the liquid that seeps from the grapes renders them, the grapes, susceptible to tuma. Shammai says it has become susceptible to tuma, and Hillel says it is not susceptible. And eventually, Hillel conceded to Shammai. And this shows that the juice that seeps out of grapes does render the grapes themselves susceptible to tuma, which apparently contradicts the ruling of our Mishnah. And the Gemara explains there, in the case of the Baraisa, he wants the juice as a beverage, and one's intention influences the capability of certain liquids to render substances susceptible to tuma. Therefore, the liquid that seeps from the grapes renders them susceptible to tuma. But here, in the case of the Mishnah, he does not want that juice as a beverage, and therefore the grapes are not rendered susceptible to becoming tameh. That's what I've got for us today. Take a couple of questions. Bell, I feel the same way as I do during Passover. I have had non-Jewish friends asking if I felt deprived and was a little confused. These periods of strictured strictured observance are part of the Jewish year, and there are the certain actions that I appreciate as I grow in learning, right? I was talking about when we reduce our joy, or we reduce our joyful actions and we take joy in following the law because we're reducing those actions. And Bell is, I think, talking a beautiful comment, Bell. There's this rhythm, right? There's this rhythm to the Hebrew calendar and to the Jewish year, and we go through these periods. So during Passover, exactly. So we can't eat hummus. We have to clean out our houses. We can't have, turkey sandwich because we can't have regular bread. So for a week we don't have that. And when we return to it, it becomes special again. And during that week, we have much more mindful eating, and we're reminded of the Exodus from Egypt, etc. Right? And right now, as we enter the 9 days, beginning tonight, although we don't diminish our joy on Shabbos, and we're going to have 2 Shabboses in the 9 days, right? This one and next Shabbos, before Tisha B'Av on next Sunday. But this idea that we enter this period, we can take joy in knowing what we've lost, right? Because, we don't have the temple, and we need to mourn that. But at least we are a people that yearns for a temple, that yearns for this connection with the Creator, that existed at one time, that created, this unique and incredible connection in the world, a place, kind of a footstool, the place where earth and heaven met, footstool for the Lord that was in the world, and that will come again. That will come again. That's what the tradition says when Mashiach comes, when the Messiah comes, right? The third temple will be built and it will exist again. And so most of the year, okay, we talk about it, we mention it in our prayers that it should be rebuilt soon. But during these 9 days, we try to really wow, imagine if we had it. Imagine what we had when it was here. Imagine what we did that caused us to lose it. Imagine what it will be like when it comes back. This is a time of the year when we can do that, and what a gift that is. Sharon, fish meat? The term is confusing. Isn't fish parve unless cooked in meat utensils or with meat? Yes, but what are they talking about here? Right, that fish is considered like meat when it comes to, can you leave it in the possession of an idolater and then get it back and eat it? Right, so no, because fish is normally cooked. If it was in the possession of the Gentiles, it might have been stored in the places where they cook their foods. So, meat, just in other words, the way it's treated in the kitchen, other than the fact that we don't eat it with dairy, renders it to be considered like meat just for the purposes of we don't eat the cooked food of Gentiles. It is interesting also that, so we don't eat meat and dairy together, right? But pious people also eat their fish separately, right? So like at a Shabbos dinner, you don't have fish and meat on the same plate. Fish is its own plate. Fish is its own plate. It's a nice thing. Keep it separate. And finally, Andy, I read once that it took 40 years in order for them to grow an army large enough to overcome the inhabitants of the promised land. Please comment on this. Yeah, no, I'll tell you why. When the population entered Israel, and we're reading that, right, in the Torah portion last week and this week, they're preparing to enter the promised land, and Joshua will lead them. And they did a census, right? A census at the end of 40 years, and they carefully recorded the numbers of each tribe. And what does the Torah say? Basically, the population had not increased. In fact, the people had, ticked off God so many times, who punished them by sending various plagues in their midst, that the population didn't grow at all. The same number of people, more or less, that left Egypt and entered the wilderness was about the number of people of their children who entered the promised land. People like to offer, rational college professors like to offer their rational explanations. Well, the Bible talks about miracles, but really this is a story that's recording, this historical phenomenon. And then, over the course of the legend over the centuries, they made it sound miraculous, but it was just, a realistic, non-miraculous, non-supernatural occurrence. So I don't hold by that. Right? I think that, there is a God in heaven. I think God can do whatever God wants. I think that God has chosen to sit back, and let us live in the world where God's presence is not continuously revealed, and therefore we can choose whether to have faith or not. Right? If you're living in the presence of the pillar of fire by night, the pillar of cloud by day, eating manna, drinking from a miraculous fountain, so believing God is not that much of a challenge. Right? And that's the way it was for that generation, and there was a specific reason for it. And the Torah was, the stories of the Torah are sort of geared around it because God brought the nation of Israel out of Egypt, and that happened with miracles. That's what the story is. And so the fact that we don't experience miracles now, to me, does not in any way prove that they didn't experience miracles then. Those same rationalists like to say that, kosher eating, kosher laws, that's just because in the ancient world, people who ate kosher lived longer because, pork was very unsanitary, and so they were spared the diseases that accompany pork. No, That's just a rationalist trying to win you over to his, atheist point of view. That is not what we hold. The reason that we follow the laws of kashrus is because God said so. And it has the effect of keeping us separate from the non-Jews. But it's not for a rational reason. It's just because God said so. And I'm sure that, pork chops are really good. I bet they taste great. But what can I do? My Father in heaven said I can't eat that, so I can't eat that. So that's how I understand that. And that's, the traditional Jewish view of what it means. And it was not because they were growing an army. And without the assistance of God, they would not have conquered that land in the way that they conquered it. So that's what I've got for us today. And with God's help, we'll be together again tomorrow, Saturday night, right? And we've already reached the latest Shabbos of the year. Now, each week it's just a little bit earlier. I think last week I got on the air by 9:45, so maybe this week by 9:50 p.m. Pacific. Hopefully we'll be on the air tomorrow night with God's help. That's what I've got. All the best. Good Shabbos. And may this period that we're entering, the 9 days, but starting with Shabbos, may be a time of reflection, meaning, joy in the things we can be joyful in, and gearing up to have a really meaningful day on Tisha B'Av, and then a beautiful, soaring ever skyward afterward as we head toward Elul and the new year.